That's perfect.
Thanks.
Well clapped.
Perfect.
Well clapped. I had a dry run.
There you go.
He's found it. Lovely.
That's the only one I know.
Okay, nice.
That is the
We'll
only
learn
one
them
I
by
can
the end
get.
of the year. Each
And
of
this
those.
one.
Oh,
Them two.
Okay.
You thought that was wop, didn't you? You did it. He did. Is that
I think that's the blue one. I've
Only
got a real
3 with
blue
years.
vibe about that one.
All right.
At this current time, Sally's wondering why she's here.
Yeah.
Like, what am I doing with
Yeah.
these lunatics? Don't actually know yet. We don't plan
no,
things.
it's good. It's good. I
Don't
like.
plan things.
I'm more.
Spontaneous.
I'll talk about anything.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah.
Welcome back to another episode of the Hear2Listen podcast. Today I'm joined by Jack,
Yo.
Adam,
Hello.
Sally-Ann,
Good morning.
and we've got Emily in the room as usual, making some notes and stuff. Before we get to our amazing guest today, I've just been told that Adam wants to make a little shout out. So
Yeah.
before we get into the main pod, Adam, take it away.
Yeah, just little announcements based on our analytics on our Anchor platform, which is mainly where all our audio stuff sits. And I was kind of amused by it. And if you've seen the last episode, you've heard this before. But there was a little shout out basically to like the people that are listening to us. So shout out to Singapore, shout out to New Zealand, Russia, and South Africa. So good to have you with us, along with our, English-speaking, US and UK. It was also worth mentioning that our demographics seem to be 73% female and 27% male, and we've got a high demographic in the 28 to 34. So thanks for joining us. Awesome. Little background stuff.
That is all off from the YouTube.
The
Nice.
anchor stuff. So this
Anchor.
is separate to the YouTube stuff, which you can probably see, like our listeners and views and things like that.
So out of all of those things you just given us, how many people was that derived from?
It's around 6.
Yes. So that was one from each, basically.
Yeah, I mean it's got like a most viewed, and it's in like the 100, I think it is 120, and then it's got like listener base, and it says 6. And I don't know quite what they're basing that on. I don't know if it's like 1 from Spotify. I'd like to think 6 from each of the platforms, but that's probably a bit optimistic.
Yeah, but YouTube comes under that, doesn't it?
No, that's separate.
No,
Yeah,
that's
because that's
separate.
like audio only is the Anchor stuff with Spotify and iTunes and all the things that we're kind of linked into, whereas YouTube is completely separate. I don't have the analytics. Perhaps you can kind of reveal that sometime.
Well,
Max.
yeah,
go
I'm
for it.
curious.
You'd understand it more than I would.
Oh, okay.
You would. You're better with numbers
But
and stuff.
Okay.
You've just said hello to 6 people that watch our podcast, yeah?
Yeah.
But there's like
And
100
everybody
Oh,
else.
well, yes, that's what I
Yeah,
mean.
yeah,
There's like
well done, Jack.
40
Well
other
done.
subscribers.
Yeah, come on,
and
Adam.
because I know 4 of them are at least us, so you can't say 44. And then we've got like at least 200 views on some of our videos, and you're saying hello to the 6.
Yeah.
I mean, they're going to
They
appreciate
mean
it.
That's
a lot
almost.
to us.
That's
But you got to
almost.
say hello to everyone else as well.
Yeah, but
Yeah.
he's that guy. He's that guy that bigs up all the Adapt Massive, but misses out some names.
Yeah.
You mean the ADTP?
Yeah,
Yeah.
DTP,
Okay.
so
Yeah.
like that.
We won't bring that up again.
Yeah.
But no, thank you
That's
anyway.
it.
All
That's
those
all.
that are viewing,
Thanks.
thank you very much.
Thanks for
And
joining us.
if you are real, like we said on last
You are real.
podcast,
Not a bot or a
put a
VPN.
comment in the comment section below.
Well, we got one.
Did we?
We did.
Yeah, Katie. Hello, Katie. Thanks for the
Shout out,
comment.
Katie.
Cheers, Katie.
We love it. Respect.
Right.
On
Anyway,
Back to the topic.
back to the topic. So yes, ladies and gents, we have got an amazing guest. We keep saying that we need to get more and more people in because people are getting bored of just us 4. We normally have Leon. This is normally 4. We've got the other podcast with the girls that have, Steph and Emily that have started. But yeah, I've been looking forward to this one only because it did cause a little bit of a debate between me and Jack because protective behaviours and some of the stuff that I actually gained and learnt from the training that
I wasn't disagreeing with what you were saying, by the way.
he definitely
You're fine.
was.
No,
He definitely
We'll-
was.
no,
We'll get to that.
yeah.
No, he wasn't. But Jack is one of those people. Jack puts the questions to us that potentially the audience are going to have.
Absolutely.
And we've got a lot of differences in our lives and stuff. And I did actually say, when I was talking about, I think we actually spoke about it yesterday, because some of the stuff I was saying about the use of language, for example. So we'll get into PBs and protective behaviours, and you can do a little introduction and stuff in a
PBs.
sec. I know my lingo, mate.
This guy.
Done a little research. No, I'm not there, mate. But I genuinely said to Jack last night, I said, I wouldn't have taken as much from the 2-day training course if 1, I hadn't got my own kids, and 2, I wasn't in the job that I'm in, like working with young people. And obviously I've had a bit more life experience and stuff, but yeah, I genuinely, I remember leaving there and thinking, I want to get all these guys. I've said to you many a times that I definitely want to get them on. even to the length, to the sort of thinking about on an average summer, we'd have 120 seasonal staff. Now, I don't know how we'd get all those booked on something like that, but there's certainly some tips and some tricks that they could learn, which they could then take onto their NCS program as staff members, whether it is their use of language, early warning signs, or whatever it is. But yeah, we'll get to that in convo in a second. But do you want to just tell us what it is that you do and what you train and
why you are here?
Why I'm here? That's a really good question. When I got lost on my way here today, but I'm having a ball already. It's just wonderful. There's so much energy in the room. So thank you for inviting me.
No worries.
I'm here because I believe that we all have a right to feel safe all the time, basically. And I think one that we come on to language a bit later on. Some of the ways people use language. If we think of communication. So communication isn't just what we say, it's what we do. So when I'm talking about communication, we're using this language of safety, which is about our behaviour as well. So I try to behave in a non-violent way at all times, hence expressions like, what was one we had earlier on? Oh, my back is shot.
Shot to bits.
So shot to bits. So, just the use of violent metaphors. Violence perpetuates violence. Violent metaphors sort of minimises perhaps the effect of violence. Think about language of warfare. Things like collateral damage. Well, what is collateral damage? That normally means somebody innocent has died. Is there such a thing as friendly fire? So it's not saying that you can't say those things. It's just being mindful of our language, being mindful of our interactions, because what I don't want is people to feel safe and comfortable with me. And if people feel safe, they tend to behave safer. When we see unsafe behaviour, it's often because they don't feel safe. And it's my background in this was really, I first met it when I was working in secondary schools with young men that didn't feel safe. But they couldn't say they don't feel safe because as a 15-year-old guy, you don't say I don't feel safe because what will people call you? Yeah, so that's what it is. So that's, for me, protective behaviours is the only model I've met that has this communication, I guess, a model of communication which helps me understand, that might be why that person is behaving that way or speaking that way. And I try and do, and what we had a lot of fun doing, Max. I think I remember about you when you came on the training with those trousers. I was looking for the trousers
do you know
today.
What? Oh, no. I was so close to putting them on. My chef type smart. I wore them to Keely's wedding. Them ones made me look like a chef. The grey ones with the what are you laughing for?
Yeah.
They're good.
They're good
they are good. You liked them though, didn't you?
I love them. I just think it. Well, again, it's about. It's not about expecting everyone to be the same as each other. We all come with our individual differences, which is to be celebrated, and our strengths. And
like my trousers.
Like the trousers. And I guess I think think about what comes. I certainly wish I'd been taught protective behaviours when I was much younger. Because it's about feeling comfortable in your own skin, and you must have felt comfortable in your own skin to wear those trousers.
No. He puts those trousers on to distract from everything else. Because he knows if you're looking at his trousers, you're not looking at his big old beard.
I don't, because the barber let me down last night, so I didn't get trim. But no, genuinely, I'm so happy I didn't wear them.
I wish.
Because I went to get my jumper this morning, and I see them there. I thought, I haven't worn them since that training. I thought, how mad would that be? That's a bit much, isn't it?
You should have done it, man.
No way.
That would have been perfect.
No way. I do remember feeling, and I shouldn't have, but I think I explained it as I felt like I was on an episode of Loose Women at one point. I was the only male in the room, wasn't I?
I think so, yeah.
What do you mean you think so? I definitely was. I definitely was. But the thing that got me through that first day, not that I couldn't get through the first day, I had no reason why I couldn't, but I did feel a little bit out of my comfort zone. Training anyway is quite scary. I get nervous. I still get nervous when I run group work. Like, that I can do it. We know that we'll do an amazing job, but I still get those butterflies, still get those early warning signs.
Yeah.
And all that sort of stuff. But I remember sitting in there, and I got there fairly early on day one, and it was at Homemead Youth Club, wasn't it? And I've been there room, many a time. So it's a comfortable place. I know I dropped Mia off for cheerleading and all that sort of stuff. I was sitting there, and then it started to fill up, and I thought, it's definitely not what I expected. I genuinely didn't look into what it was. For protective behaviours, I'm going in to deliver programmes in schools about knife crime and just youth crime and stuff. I'm going to learn a bit of self-defence or something. Protective behaviours, do you know? No, it wasn't that. But sat there, it filled up with females. At this point, I knew I was in something that wasn't what I first expected it to be. I thought, I don't know.
Should I be here?
But then I kept thinking back to my son. I dropped Mason off at gymnastics. It was about 4 years ago when he started doing gymnastics. And it was in Shefford. And it was about 60 people in this hall. It was a massive hall, not one boy in there. And I got to the door because we was in a queue to get in. And when we got in there, and I started, because it was his first day, I was chatting to the lady and stuff. And I said to Mason, I was like, I don't think there's any lads in here, mate. I was like, you all right? He was like, yeah. Didn't care, weren't bothered. He only done 6 sessions, I think, so 6 weeks he stayed there for. And the only reason he stopped is because it wasn't what he expected. There was no trampolines, there was no equipment. It was just tumbles and cartwheels and stuff. It was like the basics. So that's when we started going to Marriott's and Philly, didn't we? And we started going on like we're actually just doing stupid stuff. I'm too old for that stuff.
Getting kicked out.
Foam pits and all that. But yeah, he'd done it. And I thought, if he can do that, and I at his age, there's no way I'd have done that. There's no way I'd have done that. So I thought, fair play, Mason. So then that's what got me through those 2 days. Didn't get me through. I actually really enjoyed it. Genuinely, once we'd done, because you make it relaxing and stuff. It's got
to be consistent with the process.
Yeah.
You can't say you've got a right to feel safe all the time and then expect people to do things they don't feel safe doing. So it's always a choice. And I always say the door's not locked. You can leave if you want to. I hope you don't. I feel sad if you do. But there you go. It's up to you. And it's when we start to talk about feelings, people go, no, not F words. We're going to talk about feelings. But actually just acknowledging that, like you did earlier on, those early warning signs, just listen to them. And if you haven't, if we go like in here now, for me it feels exciting, but I'm still not quite sure what's going on. But I know where the door is, and
at the moment,
actually, we've blocked it off.
You is an alien right now. Oh my God, there's a UFO. No, we're not going to go down that road.
You know you're editing it, so you know you're going to do it.
No, actually, I don't know if Emily might be doing it.
It's making more work for Emily.
So on the last one that we done, which I edited yesterday, there is a transit that drives into Adam's head. He doesn't know it happens yet, but on that last edit, Sean's van actually reverses into your head and then explodes. It looks pretty cool. I thought we just had we're trying to hit a young audience as well as an older audience. We're in a hard niche, really, aren't we? When you think of like work with young people, we work with adults, right? We work in schools. We have such a big target audience that we could sort of target, should we say? Target.
You're going to shoot at them again, are you?
Well, might
focus.
You're
going to focus. Your focus group.
Yes.
Or the people that you want to work with.
But why is target violent?
What do you do at a target? You shoot
at
a
but
target.
Why is shooting violent? Because shooting's a sport, not just a...
Told you he's going to ask these questions.
I mean, I think it's interesting. Is shooting a sport? That would be a good question to debate. And I think one of the lovely things about Protective Behaviours, because theme 2 says that we can talk with someone about anything, even if it feels awful or small, let's just talk. Let's talk about these things. Let's be curious about it.
Yeah, that's me.
And I think, and that's great, isn't it? I think for me, my background's education, so I was taught to teach as such. And I think now if I went back to teaching, I'd be so well. I still think I am teaching, really. I think we all are by what we do.
Yeah, definitely.
But, that idea of giving people time to talk and just own their own feelings, thoughts and behaviour. So there's a wonderful program? I don't know if you'd call it a program, but something that some schools called Philosophy for Children, which takes questions like, if a window was painted black, is it still a window? Discuss. So, this idea of...
Can you open it?
There's a good question, you see. So it says, but that's brilliant, isn't it? Because actually what it wants is young people to, or whoever it is, to start having those conversations about absolutely anything. So they practice the skill of communicating, listen to other people's opinion. Interesting what you were giving out the statistics earlier on, Adam. Let's spot fake news. Let's teach people how to spot. I'm not suggesting that was fake news. For a start,
I like it.
But you didn't get my drift. Yeah, actually, and I could. If you want to give me a soapbox now, how our whole education system needs to change. I think those secondary school students I was working with, we're still using those, probably 19th century tools for 21st century young people.
It's mad,
and so to give them an opportunity to like this, to come in and make a podcast, ask questions of each other, do that thinking. Yeah, ask the question, well, shooting's a sport. Is shooting a sport? I suppose it depends who's getting shot, isn't it?
Exactly that, yeah.
So that's what I think the exciting thing about protective behaviours is. It is a process. So it's a way you could look at absolutely anything. Its roots do happen to be in child protection. That's where it came from in the first place. But it's far more than that. It's about self-esteem. It's about resilience. I was very interested about the way you were describing the people you work with, because actually, all of us are kids still really at heart. So it's about looking at people's developmental stage and where we all are, I guess, because if we have a right to feel safe all the time, we therefore have a responsibility to observe other people's right to feel safe. And I know for sure that sometimes my ability to respond is better than others. You know, if I've not had a good night's sleep, if I'm feeling hungry, if I'm feeling scared, I'm not going to be in that place where I can perhaps respond as safely as I might do. So that's why we do Safe Place, and we do that bit about what does safe feel like. And we probably all, know people who have no idea what safe feels like. Think about now in a pandemic, PBs in a pandemic. How can we help people take that safe feeling of safety with them? And that was the reason I felt okay to come here today, because I brought my Safe Place with me. I knew I was coming to someone who, would listen to me, believe me, and do something if I needed some help.
And wears grey trousers. Why wouldn't she come to look at my trousers? I've got boring black ones on today.
So what is it you actually do then? I know you do these protective behaviours, but do you just go around and teach people the ways like you did Max, or do you go into schools with young people? Or?
I don't go into schools now. So that's where I started. I started off working for a service in Northamptonshire, and it was when emotional and behavioural difficulties were first seen as a special educational need. I guess now what we're saying is we actually think more about people who've experienced trauma and stress. EBD, it's just another label. So in Protective Behaviours, we try to not use labels. This is a person perhaps who's experiencing a crisis or some stress, or maybe has experienced trauma, and we try and work with them in a trauma-informed way. So I did that for, goodness knows, I worked, I suppose, with older young people for about 10 years, and then lots of money came into early years, and unfortunately, a lot of those young people I was working with, it didn't matter what I did, they were still in an environment that was pretty hostile to their ways of behaving, and they got excluded anyway. But I like to think that they did go on to have far more sort of self-awareness about their own feelings, and what they needed is people around them who would listen to them, believe them, and do something to help them. So the change that came, I guess, was that a lot of money, I say, went into early years. So I thought, well, actually, if we can get this in really, really early, like you were saying with Mason, ask them what are they feeling, what are they thinking, what are their choices, help them see that they have choices, and encourage them to make safer choices. But then I decided I could do far more training the people that were working with the people.
Because in that room there was like social workers, there was obviously key workers, not key workers, teachers. Who else? There's a
lots of
big
sort
mix
of
of people in that room.
Well, the training is actually for anybody. I mean, my drive is to also get it into every undergraduate course. And anybody who's going to work with children, young people, and families, they need to know how to communicate with them in a respectful way.
Sure, there's a police officer in there as well. There's a police. There's a huge mix of people.
Well, it came
just
to
me.
not just you.
It's
not
me.
just us.
No.
Put down language, Matt.
Yes, there you go. See, but this is like, actually, I was going to bring it up because you're saying about the change of language, and that almost we've been conditioned, haven't we? As human beings, we've been conditioned. So it's been passed down. You showed me that hypnosis thingy. What's he called? That guy.
Bruce Lipton.
And it's talking about that stuff, our subconscious sort of thoughts, all that stuff, and that's all. I think it all ties up together, because whether it's us or parents saying it to us and us saying it to kids and it's just it's a domino effect. It's getting passed down, not to the point, but parts of that behaviour, that language, that vocabulary, whatever it is, it comes from somewhere. We're not born. We're born. No. They were saying on this hypnosis program, it's the first 7 years of our lives, we're in hypnosis. When we're born until we're 7, we're pretty much in a hypnosis state, because we're just watching, we're taking it in, we're sponges, we're absorbing it. So that's why I think like this as well, especially what you do and promote and teach and sort of training. I think it's so valuable. I do, and I'm not going to say I've taken everything from it and I've embedded it, because part of PBs is about the individual embedding it into their experiences and into their life, because everyone's different.
Absolutely. And that's what frustrates people, because they want a program.
Yeah, but you can't.
Give me a program I can teach. And it's not, this is a process. It's a way of looking at everything. And I really like what you said there, because, we're all born, in fact, babies, if you think about it, they do a lot of the protective behaviours process because they feel and they do. Feel and do. So what they need is those adults to be the architects of that thinking brain, to help them make the connections, as you say. And it's that bit about babies not knowing the unwritten rules, which I think are those things we were talking about, those external influences. And yet you ask them very early on, they'll use words that they would never have known unless they'd heard it from an adult. Like when they call themselves stupid, I'm stupid, I'm rubbish, I can't. where do they get that from?
Yeah.
You know, and actually want to change all that language. And it's not that you think about the responsibility of the parent or a carer. You don't really get taught what to do, so you end up doing what was done to you because it's really hard to think of anything else when you're feeling stressed. So what we really want to do is encourage people just to take a step back and develop those alternative scripts. I can't remember if it had happened when I was with, I think it happened after I did the course that you were on. I was sitting in this, it was a beautiful place near where I live, and there's, oops, just dropped that on the floor. Lots of families there, and it was summer, and I had my little dog with me, and there was a little girl there, and you know when they're sort of all, they're really bright-eyed and bushy-tailed, and she was like, that's just watching what was going on. And she looked at my dog, and it went towards her, and she started to cry, and her dad said to her, "Don't be silly, it's only a little dog." So straight away, her feelings were dismissed. It wasn't that it was awful, terrible and nasty, but he didn't want her to feel scared. Yeah. It's okay to feel scared. So, and then it got worse. So I thought, don't say anything yet, Sally-Ann. Because that's what I do. I just watch what's going on. And then she sat on the bench, and he lifted her up and sat her on the bench, and she had a sip of her drink. And I don't think she realised that there wasn't a back on the bench. And she leant back, and you can imagine the noise as she hit the ground, and then the scream that came out then. And then again, the dad wasn't being awful or terrible or nasty, but he didn't know what to do. That is, he just picked her up and said, "You're okay. It didn't hurt."
Yeah. It did.
Yeah.
So do you get my drift? And again, it's not because it just didn't know what else to say. Actually, and if we can go back to thinking about how you just acknowledge all we do in protective behaviours. I don't say all in a minimist way. If somebody's feeling worried, you know, I'm feeling worried about going on a school trip, rather than the person saying, "You don't need to worry about that," which dismisses their feelings, actually says, "So you're telling me you're feeling worried? Is there anything I could do to help you feel less worried? Do you want to talk about it?" You know, so it's not about trying to fix people or solve their problems. Just a tiny, and people say, "Oh, you're being pedantic." The big one that people find really hard is in protective behaviours, because it's a process is about people feeling empowered, and that they can make decisions for themselves, but they don't have to make them by themselves. So this is the idea of being able to talk with people about stuff. But because I want to feel empowered, I'm not going to let anybody else make me feel. So my feelings are my feelings. I feel happy when, I feel sad when, I feel frustrated when. How many times do you hear people saying, "You're making me really cross"? Yeah? So if I say to somebody, "You're making me really cross," who has the power in the relationship? The person who's making them. Yeah, they're pressing the buttons. So some people find that really hard to take on, that you can't be made to feel anything. And people can think that if they want to. But if I believe that somebody can make me feel good, that means they can also make me feel bad. And they have the power, and they can pull my strings. Yeah. So, and if you listen, because I'm mindful you're listening to music, we're talking about music, listen to the words in songs.
No.
It's just incredible. I'm going to go back a bit because of my age, but there's a song.
So not the ones that he listens to.
But it's still in there. It's still in there. You know, you make me feel like a natural woman. Well, actually, I can do that for myself. Thank you. I don't need anyone else to make me. Or I can make you feel good. No, you can't. I feel good when. So some people say, "Oh, you're playing with language," but it is about internal locus of control. That's why I'm very against settings, education otherwise, that use reward systems. You know,
but they all don't. They
don't necessarily. Some of them do more acknowledgement. So there's a guy called Paul Dix who's written a book called "When the Adults Change, Everything Changes," and it's amazing. Still amazes me how many schools haven't really looked at that as a text. Because it's about acknowledgement. So it goes back to like acknowledging feelings of the little girl who fell over. You know, oh, that must have really hurt. Are you feeling upset? Are you physically hurt as well? But actually, just acknowledging and thanking people for the things they do. Thank you for being ready to start. You know, or because if you don't feel safe in the setting, how on earth can you learn? You know, so it's about creating that culture and that environment where people value each other for being themselves. And they have a system which respects each other's differences and what they need. You know, again, what are we doing if we're still insisting that young people all sit at the same size chairs, at the same size desk? You know, you go into some of these natty offices now and they've got standing up desks and all sorts, providing you're learning and you're not stopping other people from learning. Learn how you learn.
How long was it since you've been in education? Did you say
Actually, into school. I go into schools when I'm training, and I always do.
You was a teacher.
Teaching. Teaching. I stopped actually class teaching. You've got me.
Just do it. Just a rough.
85, 87, sort of 96-ish.
Just I didn't want the date. I just how many years ago.
January the 3rd.
You've done that to yourself.
It would always be the beginning of a term because you can't leave before the end of a term. I guess what I really like doing now is because a lot of the training that I do is in schools.
Yeah.
So, but you can
just leave.
No.
I know what you're thinking.
But just the feel, you know how you go in, you must do when you go into whatever setting, you can feel it.
Oh, we honestly.
I call it the scratch and sniff approach. You just sort of stand there and you just breathe in and you think, what's going on? My favourite ones are when they have signs up like, so we respect each other, or they might even have the 2 themes of protective behaviours up. And then you hear people shouting at each other. So you think, well, that doesn't quite fit, does it? What's the ethos of our setting?
Teachers have got it hard, though. I mean, you've experienced this. Adam, we was doing a Health to Mind last year before, obviously, the pandemic and stuff, and we see firsthand the stresses and but just they're getting pulled apart, literally, weren't they? Some of the tutors, and this was like senior members of staff that are doing lunch duties and getting stretched all over the place, just dealing with this, that, and the other. Like, we do get the best of it, so we get to go in, and it's probably like what you get to do now as well. You get to go, and when I said you get to leave, like if we was there full time, we often say, would we still get the response? Would we still have the energy that we've got? Because we're there every day. But because we're not, we get to do what we do. We have loads of fun. We the young people are engaging, and then we leave. But we get respect from the students. Yeah. We don't demand it. And I'm not saying teachers demand respect at all. Some may. I can only speak for myself. Hey,
very
got
good,
that one from
very
you
good,
as well.
yes, yeah.
So I'll own that one. But we've seen some horror stories at schools. It's just like, you said about the system not changing, the education system. There was that motivational post on Facebook I see about 4 years ago. It's like, education system, you look at whether it's technology, the stuff that we're using, the cameras, the phones, the cars, anything like that, like tech, it's evolved massively. So is every other thing in life. But the only thing that's got left behind is the education system. Now, why is that? Why are they still trying to teach a goldfish to climb a tree? Like, it's never going to work. And some kids are not going to be able to sit down. I think Leon knows a bit more about the aims to why they was doing the education to why it was first embedded the way that it was. Everyone sits down quiet, no talking, none of this. And I believe, again, my opinion, not the opinion of Hear2Listen, this is something that Leon mentioned, I believe, to get people used to working in factories back in the day. Right? That's what it was about. Is that what it's still about? Like, is that what they want us to do?
It's interesting. We talk about sort of learnt compliance, and protective behaviours isn't about learnt compliance, and I guess it's about... I feel interested in what you're saying there, because I think there's some fantastic stuff going on in schools, and I think it's about that. Let's talk about why is it our exclusion rate is X, Y, or Z, or whatever it might be. Let's ask the young people. Let's get them involved in the learning. So if you look at the difference between primary and secondary, certainly if you look in early years, it's all around what interests you and learning to learn. There's a wonderful school. I'm going to misquote it. I always say it's Barrowford. I think Barrowford in. Anyway, their tagline of their primary school is "Love to learn, learn to love." Or learn to love to learn. I'm not sure which way around it is.
It works,
but it's both ways, absolutely. It's a bit like your name. I really like that. Is it Hear to listen, listen to hear?
Max. I'm like,
it's not all about you, Max.
You pointed at me and said your name.
I meant as in
Our
the
name.
people in yes, the name. Yeah.
We knew what you meant.
Yeah.
It's only
so it's that, and again, that's a really good use of words. And if you start to think about what does that actually mean, hear to listen, listen to hear. And no, I'm digressing now. I'm really good at that.
I actually really like that. I've never looked
Well, that's
at
where
it
it came from.
What?
That's where it came. We're both trained counsellors, so we were constantly told, like, if you're listening to somebody, you really hear what people say. Is basically where that name come from.
Yeah.
So good spot.
Listen to him.
Yeah.
I've never noticed that.
Well, there you go.
Learn something new every day.
Yeah. But so their whole ethos is around the relationship. It's a relational stuff, and I'm wondering, when you go in, you say, we don't demand respect, but I bet you give respect.
Yeah.
And therefore you it's reciprocal. You get it back. And I imagine if somebody did say something to you that caused you offence or hurt, you would find a way to have a conversation with them. you wouldn't exclude them. You
Big
wouldn't.
smile.
You'd find a way. You just say, "Hey, mate, I didn't appreciate that," or whatever it might be. And I think that's the difficulty when we're in a system which is results driven, and what is it we actually value, and what is it that young people value about themselves, and this idea of let them tell us where they want to go with their learning. That's what I think about it. If I was back in a classroom, what would I say to the students? It would be, what is it you want to know? What is the thing that you want to learn about? And we could build our learning around that. And the other thing is about respect. I think, did I show the Peter Kay clip when you were on the course? Where he talks about, have we got any teachers in here?
We watched a few, yes.
Yeah, and everybody shouts out, and he says, put your hands out, don't shout out. Yeah, but that idea about... if you had a colleague, a peer, who was late for work, probably the most important thing to you would be when they arrived was, are they okay? If they were held up, you didn't know. And why don't we? I think I certainly would, but want to be able to say to school-based staff, if a student is late, when they arrive, just welcome them in like you would an adult. If you wouldn't treat an adult that way, if you wouldn't treat somebody in the staff room that way. Don't treat the students that way.
I get treated that way when I get into work.
Where have you been?
You're 3 minutes late.
What
Jack.
do you call this?
I'm like, well, I got caught up, mate. You know what I mean?
Got a bad back.
Yeah.
But they get to my son's school, they get detention if they're late, and that could be something like, to be honest, I've never really looked at it like that, and I've never thought, actually, no, you deserve the detention, because if he's a minute late or whatever, there's been something happen. Like, he walked to school this morning, I did offer him a lift, he was a few minutes late leaving the house, but he would have still made it, and he was absolutely hammering it down.
Yeah.
Rain, hammering it down. There's the one. That's not too bad. That's not too bad. But yeah, immediately detention, and they made it quite clear when we went round the school and had a little look. They said if they're late, if they come in with no tie on.
Is this a zero tolerance setting? I assume.
This is a secondary school. Yeah, it's a secondary. So I think they're just trying to implement like.
What is it? Is this again? I don't. Because there will be some students who we talk about choice control and time limit. I know, what about the students perhaps who have to go to settings where, I don't know, they have to get a public transport. Yeah. You can't control if the bus is late. And so therefore it just creates more stress in the student before they get there. They either, I don't know, I mean, I think about my own experience, I've spent lots of time really, really fearful. So therefore my learning was impacted because I felt so worried about being kept behind because somebody else in the class was talking. So therefore the whole class punishment, we're going to keep you in and whatever. So then I might miss my bus to get home. And then when does the next bus come? And then, then everything's out of your control. And yes, we're not, we can't control everything that goes on, but what we can do then, Joe, is perhaps try and teach some of those skills so I could keep myself at least self-regulated, so the whole breathing stuff or whatever. But we need to change it from both sides. I think it's about how we educate, and that's why it's an absolute joy, to be talking with you today. But also with my training, actually, you see people who are in the system who start to question some of that stuff, who start to ask why. Why are we doing it that way? Well, because that's what we've always done. Well, why are we doing it that way? Yeah. So why are we doing it that way? Well, that's what people expect. But why do they? Show me the evidence. Show me the evidence.
I love that.
Yeah.
And there's not enough of that, is there really? Let's be honest. Like, there's people, again, like with all the stuff that's going on, I'm definitely not going down this rabbit hole, right? I'm not going to start talking about the pandemic and everything else. Yeah. But there is not enough questioning going on. There's not. Let's be honest. Anything in general. No, I bet with this whole thing as well, like there's so much of this fake news, all this sort of stuff. There's so much contradiction with what's going on. Why is Joe Public and anyone else not asking the questions that should be asked?
Because there's nowhere to get the answers. You're asking people that don't know the answers, who are just giving you, it's always been like that.
Yeah.
Well, we do this because it's always been like that. It's like, well, that don't make sense to me. Like at all.
Yeah, but there are places, there's some really, really good practice out there, and I think that's part of it. Is so if you think about those 7 strategies in protective behaviours, so first of all, I want to keep reinforcing those 2 themes: the will of the right to feel safe all the time. We can talk. So this idea of let's at least talk about it, because if it doesn't, then it just keeps going round and round, and then people get more. They either get, I guess, where they give up, or they actually get ill because they feel anxious. So let's find a way to reinforce those 2 themes. Then the what if question, which is the one step removed. What if we did it differently? what might that look like? So you can again start. So there's really nice overlaps with things like protective behaviours and solution focused brief therapy, because you're looking for the exceptions and you're looking for the what else and what else could we do. So we asked the what if question. I think the one we did is, how could someone keep themselves feeling safe even if they were asked to clean a tiger's teeth? Do you remember that one? So we start to practice free thinking, as we call it, in protective behaviours. So we come up with lots and lots of ideas, you know, which is probably a lot like the work that you do. You try, like, we could do this and we could do that and we could do that.
I just really want to talk about that now. How could you clean a tiger's teeth and feel safe?
Come on then, we'll point it to him. So
I got one that comes to my head.
Go on then.
You got a contraption that's sort of built like that out of metal,
Right.
with a bit of slab of meat over it, and the tiger bites in the meat, and it clamps down on the metal, and its teeth are poking through the metal holes, and then you're on the other side of the metal grate just cleaning his teeth.
That's ingenious.
That
Never had that
Never
before.
had that
Nobody's
answer.
gone into the engineering. My favourite one is, why are we cleaning the tiger's teeth? 'Cause that's what we've always done.
Yeah.
Well, why?
Because they're dirty.
That's what we do. Show me the evidence. Tigers in the wild probably don't get their teeth cleaned, do they?
Oh, but they do.
What? How do they do it?
They
then?
chew bones and bark.
There we are. So we find out how they do it, and
then
we
we
do
do
the
it.
same there.
Yeah.
Yeah. Or my other one is to get, in service stations you can get those self-cleaning toothbrushes.
Yeah.
Edible ones.
Yeah.
Lob a few of those in for the tiger. But you get my drift. So
Yeah.
you can start free thinking about something, a bit of fun, and then how could someone keep themselves feeling safe even if they could hear people shouting in the next room? How could someone keep themselves feeling safe even if there was a pandemic? I mentioned the P word. There you are. I've done a whole COVID-19 strategy. I'll send it to you with how I'm using the 7 strategies to keep myself feeling safe during this event, because things happen. Choice, control, time limit. We'd have this thing happened.
I'd say don't watch the news every night if you want to feel safe.
Absolutely. So I tend to listen to the news once a day, I'm quite I guess fussy about what news I listen to and what I don't listen to.
Adam.
Absolutely, and question it. And I think, so that was the one step removed. Now, theme reinforcement, one step removed. Network review. So, who are the people on your network who will listen to you, believe you, and do something? Who are the ones you trust? Who are the ones you feel comfortable with? Get rid of those news outlets that you don't feel safe listening to. Persistence. So that's that bit, isn't it? Sticking at it. Yeah. And if you think about behaviour doesn't change overnight. We need to, if we're trying to change somebody's behaviour, we stick at it. And if it doesn't work, we find another way, which is the protective interruption. That's when we avoid violent metaphors in protective behaviours. One, that really violent metaphor, which is flogging a dead horse. Now that's really violent, isn't it? So the other
I've never used it myself.
I don't really use it.
I'd get annoyed.
I actually kind of like it.
I thought you might do.
Because it's just like flogging, yeah. I don't know, it's just a funny word.
Well, if you
And
think
then
of
a
flogging,
dead horse, like, it's just so random.
I just
to
got
me.
a picture of Jack with a horse on his shoulder now.
Flogging this dead horse. You know what I mean?
trying to horse for sale.
Yeah.
Absolutely, rather than hit. I like that. Yeah. But the other PB version of that is, when the horse is dead, it's time to dismount. There you are. There's another version of it. So this idea of we're stopping what we're going to do. It's not working. So let's try and think of another way. So that's the protective interruption. That's that taking the break. And then I guess a lot of the work that I do with children, young people and families is the risking on purpose, which is feel the fear and choose to do it because the outcome's going to be worth it. So because protective behaviours wants people to go out and live life to the full, because I don't think this is a rehearsal. I think this is a real thing now, isn't it? What we're doing, you know what I mean?
Might be a simulation, apparently. But
Could be a simulation, you don't know.
With all the technology that's out there, we don't even know what's
that's one of those things that's too big a thing for me to think about. That gives
watching
me
a few
huge
things
early warning signs.
We won't talk about that.
No, I'm not
yet,
watching
so
that.
Save that for episode 2.
And then the bit that I think is what Max was talking about at the very beginning, the thing for me, which is when I left teaching for the first time, I went into sales. And you always had to have something that had a unique selling point, your USP. And the USP. I'm now thinking of flying saucers. What are they not?
UFO. See, I was thinking of a gun. USP. It's a pistol.
Goodness. Oh, gee. Good. Okay. So the thing that's
Should have renamed it now.
Otherwise, the key feature of protective behaviours is the language of safety. So that's that model of communication. So what's the quality of my communication, be it my words or my behaviour? For me, sexist, racist, and that is never okay. It's not okay language. And again, and how do we have those conversations with people who use that? Because I want to find a way to work with them. So I might need to own my feelings.
Yeah.
I feel upset when I hear that type of language. Or I might, if I don't feel safe enough to say as I statement, I could use the one step removed, and I could say, some people find that language offensive. Can we just be mindful of that? Anyway, so that's that quality part of the language of safety. The other side of it is shared meaning. So I think one of the things why people enjoy the training so much is because there's an awful lot of shared meaning in the training. It means you can have fun, and hopefully my idea of fun is the same as your idea of fun. So people we know very well, we might use language where perhaps there's less quality, but because we know them well, we've got this shared meaning. So they don't feel offended by it, but we're really careful where we do that. I got the real feel when I came in here today that you all work very closely together, and you probably have in-jokes, whereas if I was a new person starting here, I might not understand what's going on, and I might think, a bit like sarcasm. Some people really like sarcasm, and I admit, at times I can be a tad sarcastic, but I like to think that's with people that we've got, hence the trouser thing. I
really offended, actually. Chucking them in a bin when I get home.
But also mindful of those people who take language very literally. So you've got to be careful then, haven't you, about the sarcasm? You might mismark there. So that's that sort of private type stuff. The clarity part of this language of safety model is the body language stuff. It's the non-verbal and the verbal. And I, again, when think about relationships with people, the young people and the families that you work with, they'll know if you're being genuine, don't they? They pick up on it. So that means you don't drop hints. You're not expecting them to read your mind. Your non-verbal cues and your verbal cues are going together. So that's the clarity's there with that.
See, that's where you say about like violent language and stuff. And although some of the stuff I say may come from violent things, like you say, my body language and I'm smiling and I'm enthusiastic, I feel like that overrides the language that I'm using.
Yeah.
Maybe.
And absolutely, that's it, because it depends how it's received. If you're someone who's experienced an awful lot of violence in your life and you hear violent images, even things like gobsmacked, I was gobsmacked. Well, if you've ever been smacked in the gob, hearing the words I was gobsmacked, and actually it's very easy to say something different, like, oh, well, I felt amazed. So it's not about saying to people, you can't use that language. It's just being mindful of the effect of that language and who you might say it to. And I think certainly if we then go back to us being role models for our children and young people, what language do I want them to use? Why? It's interesting, isn't it? How we were talking about in early years, where if you give somebody something that's pointy or sharp, and they'll turn it into a gun straight away, and they go around running kill, kill, kill. Well, where did they hear that word in the first place? It's a huge sea change, and the amount of violence. If we don't get me onto, the other soapbox I was going to get onto then, but the amount of violence against women and girls, and how do we stop that? Not every man is violent, but the vast majority of violence against women is perpetrated by a male. And is that to do with those unwritten rules for those young men that I was working with who believed it wasn't macho to be able to say you felt scared or you felt unsafe? The society you grew up said as a 15-year-old lad you had to be strong and tough, and the way you showed that was through violence.
We had that on the podcast a couple of weeks ago with Sean. He had a family background where he described like everything there he was essentially ashamed of. There was violence, there was drinking, and being able to go out into the community, and he wasn't able to cry, so he used to pick fights to get into that point where he could access those emotions and then have that release, and then almost convince people this is the reason I'm crying, because I just got beat up, not what's going on behind closed doors. Yeah, that was. And
that actually, I could perhaps do I've lost my words now. That's exactly it. What you said there, it's sort of taken me somewhere. But that in the handout, the person who had feelings, where you had to cover up all those sad, lonely, worried, anxious feelings with the brave and the tough. Actually, how do we start unpeeling that? But the great thing about it is, we can change. So unwritten rules, they change over time and place. I think shared that quote with you. Is it? I always misquote people, but we're not born with prejudice. We learn prejudice. Therefore, if we learn prejudice, we can unlearn prejudice. If we've learned to behave in that way, we can unlearn
Speaking
that
of
way.
learning and behaving like that
video.
I
was thinking the same thing.
And also the habit, breaking a habit. Is it 21 days? It said or something. So 21 days to break a habit or a behaviour or something. I don't know if they sort of tie in with each other, but it's just persistent in making that change, and whether it's language, whether it's our behaviour, whatever it is, it's just training ourselves again, because years, months for some, years for others, have been conditioned in a certain way. Whether it's such a broad sort of program, because when you look at the unwritten rules now as well, we spent quite a lot of time on that. There is so many unwritten rules.
When you mean unwritten rules, is that like how you fit into your family or your community?
I've got like maybe an example that might help that, because as you've been talking, obviously I'm going back to sort of my past experience. Something that I struggled with when I was younger was around self-esteem, and when you talked about the things that we learn, I wondered if part of that might be your own self-image that might be conditioned in a way as well. So one of the things that the language type that I used to carry with me well beyond my teens was, I'm rubbish at this, I'm useless at that. There was a lot of like negative attacking, self-attacking kind of language being used. And then when I did my counselling course, obviously that is a complete restructuring of your own language and understanding other people's language as well. And it took years. It took years to kind of, instead of saying, I was rubbish at this, there'll be, I struggle with this, or I find this difficult, being able to kind of just change it round so that it wasn't so self-attacking. Because part of my kind of recovery from that is to stop attacking myself, because I'd learnt that. I'd learnt,
be kind to yourself.
And that's something that God, it took a long time to change
that's what that guru. We do know your name, but I just nicknamed you the guru.
I nicknamed you the guru.
Jack basically got something, but he basically said that to Sarah. Sarah's very much been doing that, and with her condition, endometriosis, she's got a lot of stuff going on, and there has been illnesses there. But a lot of it, he believes, is from not even self-sabotage, but that self-hate, that not loving herself.
Yeah, there's a toxicity to it, I think.
That,
and I had loads of sorry to interrupt, but you just remind me, I had like loads of IBS issues and internal sickness, if you like, that got resolved much later on. But
well, do you know the body keeps the score?
Yeah.
Sylvana Colt?
Psychosomatic, is that what they call it?
Well, it's more about, just how, because we're made up our physical and emotional feelings, and they're interlinked, aren't they? So if you think about how an emotional feeling of anxiety manifests itself physically, so it's got to come out. So how does it come out? And it can either come out in anger and aggression, and because if that's especially what you think, that's what I should be doing. So that language of unwritten rules is I don't know if we talked about SMOG when you were on the training. If you think of that acronym SMOG, so if ever you hear the word I should be better at this, or the I must do this, I ought to be doing this, I ought to be doing better, I ought to know how to do this, and you gotta do that because you're one of those. So that creates that sort of smog around a situation. And if you cut through that to say perhaps, what could I do differently? What could I improve at? What might I change? A should to a could, or an ought to a might. And I think that idea.
Should was particularly damaging for me, and it was something that I found that I eliminated. I found ought a bit softer.
See, my mum mentioned that last night. Nothing to do with you, but she mentioned when someone says they should do something, she said it's because they don't want to do it. Or something.
Maybe it's a bit of, I guess sometimes what you should do often comes with somebody it's a you statement, you should, and my straight away I hear who says what you should do, you need to. How do I? Yeah, how do you know what I need?
And again, if you think says who?
Yeah, says who.
Well, I think the should comes
important.
Should kind of targets a deficit somewhere, like you should be better, or you should do this, or you should do that. And I got a lot of that when I was younger, like the expectation that I should be something different. And my thinking back, internally, I was thinking, I don't even know how to do that. Why should I be able to do that? I haven't been taught. No one's taught me. You haven't taught me. Target in there. But there was also that.
Send it back at him. Well, what have you done?
I think that's what you would have done. But I'd been conditioned very much to go along with it.
I was raised by Dawn.
Yeah, exactly.
So if that unwritten rule,
I want her to be my mummy. I'm kidding. Might need to cut that out.
Thank you for owning that.
I like it.
Love it.
Hey, all my friends say it. Don't worry, Adam.
The very first unwritten rule comes up when we do training. If I had £1 for every time this would come out, I would be so wealthy. So we talk about unwritten rules for children, and the question you ask is, what do some people think children should be like? And the very first one. Seen and not heard. Still, even now, even in 2020, 2020, 21, where are we?
I think my
I
dad
month
moved.
are
don't
we?
know.
Which
Who
year?
knows?
Well,
What day is
It's
it
only
anyway?
a number,
No,
yeah.
it
But, you know,
is.
and that's it. That's what certainly I was, you know, you mind if you kept stum, you kept, don't say anything in front of the children, all this sort of stuff that these just sort of sound bites that come up that still at times of stress. And I'm going to, my language here, you know, when Protective Behaviours came to the UK, it was back in the 70s from Australia, and it came to the police. It came to the police in Thames Valley because they were looking at restorative processes. So you're familiar with restorative processes where we all make mistakes, but it helps the person who's made the mistake own the mistake. Yeah, I made a mistake. Okay, what can you do to put it right? What repair can you do? So it was where they were trying to restrict the amount of numbers for young people that were going into the criminal justice system. It's still a fantastic process, in my opinion, fits beautifully with the protective behaviour system, and it would mean that we wouldn't keep putting people in prison, basically. What, you know, if we think about the prison system and is it working? No, we're just building more prisons. So I mean, that's another story.
Another
But
episode.
and where was I going with this? Oh, it was what we were talking about. Seen and not heard.
Should language of
I thought I was the only one that
restorative.
I'm glad. Yeah, I'm so
Restorative,
glad you're doing this because we do this all the time.
I mean, was it anything to do
told
with
you, ladies and gents, it
equi-
happens to the best of us. See, I'm
It
not
was-
the only one that
We're
forgets.
back. We're back in the room.
Oh,
we got it
back.
again. It was going back to that language around. I should be good at this. I should know better. Or I can't do this, and I should be able to do it. So it links nicely. If you're familiar with growth mindset, which says, you know, I just can't do this yet. You know,
Well,
so
that's-
it's
I literally started doing this
Yeah.
last month because Leon, again, he's not here at the moment. He probably is. He's working away in there whilst we're chatting. Anyway, and I keep saying about my memory. My memory's really bad. My memory's really bad. And he's like, no. And he told me to change the words around. It goes, your memory's... No.
you can't remember.
Told you, Leon, didn't I? But it was something, basically what you said, but just revamp some of the words. Yeah. Or no, it was something like I'm working towards it or something like that. I can't remember exactly what it was.
My memory's getting better.
Do you know what I done though? Because I did forget what he said. I just don't say it anymore.
No.
Because I stopped saying it out loud. And I've said this for many years.
Yeah.
And again, going back to Harry Potter, I'm not sure if we was even recording when we was talking about Warner Bros. Studios and the green screen. But anyway, going back to Harry Potter, I forgot it already. No, let's go. The point's back straight away. I used to say...
Hang on, Jack. Hang on, we're going to get there.
have you seen it? Are you clued up with the Harry Potter movies? And that?
Vaguely, mate. I'm the wrong...
what?
I'm
You're
more of a
Star
Lord of the
Wars.
Rings guy. You
Come
want
on,
to talk blue
get out,
screens?
get on the
They don't
table.
say his name out loud, Voldemort, right?
no.
It shall not be named.
He has done
I've said this for years and
Me
years and
too.
years. Not about Voldemort, but I
Okay.
said to Sarah had a health anxiety and she had... Every day she had something going on, brain tumour, something like dying of this, that. Every other day there was a trip to the hospital with the doctors. It was really, really bad. And I used to try to say to her, like, the more you sit and watch, say, for example, there's other soaps out there, Corrie and all that, but depressing stories, the more you watch that stuff, the more you speak about that stuff, the chances are, in my mind, that you'll end up with something like that. That's the way I used to look at it.
Okay.
But I still actually fully believe that. It may be a bit out there and all that sort of stuff, but we're talking about being conditioned and talking about rephrasing words and sentences to sort of get to a better place individually and as a whole, should we say. So the less that's spoken about that stuff, I know we need to talk, but I mean like the neg.
Yeah,
like
I think
the
so.
real
That's where you
negative
can
stuff.
use those things. I mean, because obviously there's a lot of stuff out there that sits completely outside of the language of safety. Can somebody please say to me before the end of this, George Benson, because that was where I was going, Adam, with what you were saying. Right. So yeah, now I've said it to you. I'll remember. That's one of my strategies. But then I'll remember it.
Okay, George Benson.
But we can take stuff that doesn't fit the language. So say like an episode of Hollyoaks or whatever, and you can then have a conversation about that in the one step removed away again. I'm just wondering why, what do you think about this relationship? If you're talking about relationships, especially because some of those relationships in there, I think, oh my goodness me. So you can take that stuff and perhaps you turn it around so you can use it for good, if you get my drift. Does that make sense? By talking about it rather than...
Or just don't
turn
watch
over.
it.
No,
Just don't watch
no,
it.
no,
See, I get what you're saying, but what you're saying about watching it and then getting it, you're not actually saying you watch that
It's
and
contagious.
Yeah,
No.
but I get what you're saying. Like, so
It's-
if it stresses you out and your body is then releasing those stress hormones and then you're feeling anxious and all this sort of stuff all the time, then your body, like you say, is going to be tense. It's going to be releasing all these toxins, and then it could lead to having some sort of
when
disease.
you watch TV, you're almost in that hypnosis. Sometimes like you're awake and you're really fully engaging, but other times you sort of zone out. But what you're doing is you're absorbing, like when we were
Behaviours.
behaviours, words, vocabulary, emotions. Like because I've listened to Sarah speak to her sister before, and it's like they're real people. They just die. No, they're an actor. Right? And this is why I think the kids sometimes ask, did he really die? Yeah. They're watching a movie, and I said this the other day, they struggle sometimes separating fantasy from reality on movies and things like that. So I think it was when Dumbledore, because me has been watching Harry Potter every night. It's her film at the minute. Every night it's Harry Potter. She's seen them all about 50 times now already, like literally.
She hasn't seen Dobby die yet, though, has she?
No, she has now. Yeah, we left it for like 2 years. We didn't let her watch that one because it was deep.
But actually, it's really again, it's a way of talk. If we only talk about loss and grief when it happens, that's too close. Then, so I mean, people die all the time, you know, and things die. So think till we can talk about it. And I don't have all the answers, and you know, but sometimes, you know, children ask the most incredible questions. You know, well, what happens when you die? Well, I don't know because it hasn't happened to me yet. You know, but we can go down the scientific bit. But it's actually it's upsetting for them because there are goes back to choice control time limit that we don't have any control over when we die. Which is
and it's technically a time limit.
Yeah, that's it. So, but then again, you know, some people will then say, well, actually, I live with someone who's very into science, and I sort of, these things cause me anxiety, death and dying. And he says, well, I won't give a toss because I'm not here, am I? You know, but that's not the way I am. I'm more into, I'm less scientific. I'm more.
Let's hope we go somewhere.
Yeah. Well, who knows? But I wanted to go back to what you're saying about learning to love yourself. You know, that's and.
What was the name that you asked us to remember?
George Benson. Remembered it. Got it there.
Yeah, gone.
Yeah. I could have said, I think Whitney Houston sings it as well, but I prefer the George Benson version. But, I believe that children are the future, teach them well, and all that sort of stuff. But as you go through that song, it says, the greatest learning to love yourself is the greatest love of all. And I think if more people loved themselves for who they were, genuine, without having to be, I've got to be like this, I've got to be like that, the shoulds, the musts, the oughts, or the gotta, then we're more comfortable in our own skin, and therefore we're probably going to be physically more healthy, we're certainly mentally going to be more healthy, and we'll probably make healthier choices.
So how would you advise someone or anyone to love themselves more? I mean, you said that you've experienced that. Like you had it was causing IBS and that sort of stuff. Sarah got told by the chiropractor she needs to start. He actually put a hand on her stomach and said, you need to love your stomach. And he didn't even know at this point that it was covered in scars, like literally and burnt, where she's like a hot water bottle on them.
Just reminded me of something. That was part of my recovery as well, because I did like a yoga type thing, you know, for a day, and I'd drink it from a bottle of water and I got like an upset stomach. And the thing that I learned at the end of that day was I used to attack my own body in the sense of like, oh man, you're letting me down again, or oh great, I don't need this right now, thanks for, you know, I used to be very attacking towards my kind of physical self. And at the end of that day, I'd learn it needs to be in sync. You need to like love your body, love like what it does to you. It's like a collaboration.
How do you do that though?
You look after it.
Go, I love you, mate.
No, you for a start, you start putting food in it that's good for it, for example, which is good for us as a collective, you know, the body.
Oh, that's hard though, Adam.
Yeah, but
I'm struggling.
But I wouldn't also say that maybe your eating habits define the fact that you hate yourself. I don't think you do. I think you rather like yourself.
I do like myself.
I've only met him
so
for a
you're
little
probably
while. I know
okay.
he loves himself.
I love myself. But if you don't love your health, who's going to love you?
No, she said yourself, not your health.
I meant myself, but I've got a little bit of a lisp.
But it's not in an arrogant, not in a narcissistic way. It's not.
I see you as comfortable in your own skin, and
absolutely.
I quite admire that as well.
Me too.
Oh, thanks, guys.
Yeah, I'm seeking that. I'm not there yet, but I'm seeking that. I did interrupt you earlier, Max. I think we were kind of wrapping up about what do we want to leave the viewers with in terms of
just some tips and stuff, because again I was going to refer back to this. I'm going to definitely put the link to the video that you showed me last night in description, and along with all your links and stuff that anything to do with protective behaviours and stuff that we spoke about. But I've heard this many a times, and part of that video was saying about telling yourself you're happy.
Yeah.
So this morning I started to do that, and I feel like a bit of an idiot doing it.
No, you do, don't you?
But I stood in the mirror, in front of the mirror, not in the mirror, but I stood in front of the mirror. I'm like, I'm happy. And then I even went one step further, went into Mason's bedroom. I was like, are you happy? I'm happy. You happy? And do you know what? Genuinely, and Chris has often said this, a smile's infectious. It's contagious. Mason.
I think you are as well, Max. I think your personality lends itself.
Hey, not to Mason.
Not to Mason. He's 12 years old.
It's like, sharp
get out!
Yeah.
He started waking up at 7. Now it's 1:15 and 1:15 now. This last week, really struggling. But he was on the side of his bed, like he was half dressed, sort of getting ready. And he's like, It didn't say I'm happy, but he smiled. And I went into Mia's room. I'm like, you happy? You happy? So I'm going to do this every day.
Max,
I don't know if it's going to work.
Can I ask you to put the F word in that?
You feeling happy?
Yes.
Oh my
Happy.
God, I thought you was going to say something else.
No.
You're f***ing happy? Yeah, I'm f***ing happy.
Feeling happy, because happy isn't who I am. And actually,
Yes.
who are you? You're
I'm-
you.
yeah,
And
Max.
what's your identity? And the name, the name that we get given. What name do I want to be used?
You
called
don't know
people
the
call
half of
me?
my name.
No, I don't.
I was
I'm-
going to
I'm
be
look-
called Mel. And this
Really?
come up at school the other day when we was working at CBC.
Mel.
So, yeah.
That is
My dad
so
was a big Mad Max
flat.
film.
Right, okay, it's in Mel Gibson.
Mad
Yeah,
Max
yeah.
fan.
Is that what it's from?
Yes. Right.
That's why
so
you're
I have
mad.
mum to thank for this, right? So
I
basically,
thought it was like
Mel, second name Gibson.
Roman
Right, my
name.
dad.
Of
really-
course, your name is
yeah.
Gibson. I forgot about
So
that.
my dad wanted me to be called Mel Gibson. Name went in the hat 3 times. 3 times, ladies and gents. 3 times, and Mel came out triumphant 3 times. When he went to go make the coffee, or whatever it was, in the signing bit, this is like, I don't know when it all happened, but basically she sent him out or to go get a drink, and boom, she put Max. On the flipping
Wow.
birth certificate. Thank you so much, Mum.
Not that Mel's a bad name,
No,
but
no,
Mel
after
does not
Mel-
suit Max.
no,
You're
but-
like, whoa, and Mel's just Mel. And, it's
And
not like
I
Max.
had this beauty spot, which is a mole, let's be honest. It's
Beauty
Mole
spot.
Gibson, Mel the Mole Gibson. I
That
can see it
would've
already,
been
do you know what I mean? Or here comes Mel the Mole. No, it's Mad Max. No one messed with me at school, because the only other person called Max was the Alsatian on the estate. Like, Max was a very rare name when I was at lower school, genuinely. But now, when I take the kids to school, it's like, oh, it's Max so-and-so. Max, what? Another Max? Like, we've
Loads
come
of
across
Max.
loads of Maxes. We work with 1,000 students each.
Yeah.
Well, again, not this year, but previous years. And does seem to be a bit more of a popular name now. But definitely lazy when picking names. We had a Ben, Sam and Max, all 3 letters. It's like very...
And a Jack.
That's great.
Jack.
That's great.
Jack,
Really learning to
Jack,
write
Jack
your
got an
name.
extra letter.
Yeah.
One
Imagine-
syllable, isn't it?
Imagine if you'd been called
Yeah.
Max a
One
Million.
syllable.
He was Maximus.
Yeah, I lengthened it, but that's another thing. I lengthened it, but it's only because I think conditioned all the way through my school life. A teacher saying to me, "What's it short for?" Nothing.
No.
It's Max, and to the point where once I even brought in proof of identification. It was a passport, something like Edward Peake, because I was just getting really annoyed, and I think they started doing it because they knew it annoyed me, and I annoyed them half the time. So they're like, "How can we get him back? Let's call him Maxwell." Maxwell. What are you on about? My name's Max. Like, and everyone starts laughing. It's like,
Which goes back to relationships as well, isn't it? How they matter. And it really is important. I mean, I think I said to you, my name is Sally-Ann. Well, I call myself Sally-Ann now. When I was little, I was only called Sally-Ann when I was in trouble. So I've now reclaimed Sally-Ann. I feel happy.
I was actually going to ask, do you prefer Sally-Ann or
I
Sally?
think I do prefer Sally-Ann
Yeah,
now. I don't know, but I
nice.
didn't like, but the one I really don't like is when people shorten it to Sal.
Sal.
Because I come from Essex and Sal sounds like a female pig, and I'm not. So there you are. So Sally or Sally-Ann, but now I think which goes, as I say, takes us back sort of full circle, really back to language, the importance of language and using language that's respectful. So I will always call you Max.
Thank you.
Max. There you are. And names are important, and I bet you go out of your way to try and remember people's names.
Yeah.
And if you don't like your name, what would you like being called? Adam? Would you
Oh, I'm
change
fine
it?
with that.
Ads.
I've got a bad relationship with my surname, which is Payne, like, because that gave me such torture at school
Yeah,
that I
yeah.
remember I used to write capital ADAM and then like small. It's very telling that I wanted to like
How
almost
weird
fade
is
it
that
away.
for you though? When the students at Queensbury Academy were bigging up your name, they loved it, and we do. It was like Pain. Like we even said when we did the office.
Well, actually, that's a violent word.
It is.
Well, everybody experiences pain. It depends if you inflict pain on people.
Adam? You said you was Adam, the bringer, pain.
Oh, that
Well,
was
that's quite good. But for a while, it was a damn pain. So it's perfect, really. So yeah.
It is perfect.
So I'm still seeking to reclaim that one. I don't think I'm there yet with that one either. God, I've got a lot of work to do,
I
haven't I?
can't believe I didn't see that. That's
a
good.
damn pain. Do you know what? I kind of like it.
I think that's pretty
I
cool.
kind of like it that it creates like a sentence.
The students put mine and Adam's names together. There's like Max Payne.
It's a video games character.
Oh,
by the
very
way.
So,
good.
yeah.
Yeah.
Didn't know.
But yeah,
Shall we wrap up
we're
a
ready
bit?
to wrap
Yeah.
up. I just want to, for the listeners, anyone that's or organisations that potentially thinking, oh, you know what, I want to look into protective behaviours, I would 100% recommend it. I just want to quickly say that mine and Esme's support work with the students, we embedded so much of that in with what we were doing with the groups, and it was risky behaviours, the risk on purpose, the 5-finger support, you know, the support networks and stuff like that, all that sort of stuff. It's bits that I knew ish about, like bits and bobs, but actually doing those 2 days, I think you do other duration courses or shorter ones, longer ones. I'd advise anyone that does work with young people, parents, or or has kids of their own, to definitely get on board. And when an opportunity does come up, because we are really stretched at the minute, although we get to sit here and talk, and it looks like we just have loads of fun, we do. But other than that, we're really, really busy. But when an opportunity comes for everyone to get involved, and even whether it's online,
it's all online now, and it's working really well. So now do the 2-day foundation course over 4 3-hour sessions, 2 consecutive days 1 week, 2 consecutive days the next. I do a 2.5-hour refresher course, introduction course online, a 2 by 3 hour refresher. That's the way to go. I think people are enjoying the fact that they're in their own safe space doing it. They haven't had to go to travel somewhere to.
Well, that might be a solution for next year when we do have like the big NCS take place and that again, and we've got 120 plus seasonal staff. We could actually maybe set up something where they get a snippet, a taster of the bits that are most beneficial. I definitely recommend it. Although I don't know if they'll get the same effect. I remember welling up, man. I'm trying to think what it was, but there was a part in that session. I don't know if it was day 1 or day 2. Was it the window of tolerance?
Oh yes, yeah. We're still, I can send.
I'm watching it. There's no word. I think there's just text and it's just animation, isn't it?
Yeah,
and I remember like sitting there. I'm in a room full of females. Like I can't let these tears out.
Unwritten rules.
There we go. Unwritten rule. But I'm sitting there thinking, no, this is getting me, man. This has got me.
What was it though?
It's just the video about the window of tolerance that's showing you what we can tolerate as a human. It goes from a child, adolescence to an adult.
It looks at the effect of trauma or stress, and it goes back to that respondability. All of us at times, our window of tolerance is smaller than it might be. But it talks about those young people that go into either hyper-arousal, so the fight or the flight, or the hypo-arousal, the freeze and the flop. And then how can we build their window of tolerance? So that they can, because they're going to be tested at times, aren't they? We're all tested at times. And so it's about a 6-minute clip. I can send you the link. It's Beacon House, fantastic resources, all freely available. They've done lots of wonderful stuff for children, young people and families. So we just watched it, didn't we? And then the question was, how could you use the PB strategies to build a young person's window of tolerance? But then also, how could you use those strategies to build your own window of tolerance? And I guess that's another thing about protective. People come on the course for them in their professional role,
and then
they take it for themselves. Is their personal
I think that's actually a quote on the website, or that's when I searched it, because I did forget the second slogan, so I had to have a little refresh the other day. And there was something about that, about this is not, like you said, it's not a structure or a program that you can.
It can be taught as a program, but then it's a bit like
more
tick
about the
box.
individuals. It's more about the individual and their experiences. So what I took from that, the ladies on the left and right might not have taken the same.
Yeah.
But I know once that video was playing, there was tears all around that room, and I'm just.
And you couldn't let one out.
I was too busy worrying about the weird trousers that I was wearing. Busting out my golf trousers. But no, any links or anything else that you want to sort of get out before we...
I'll send I've sent some things for you to use as illustrations. So there's Elise Gravel, she does some wonderful illustrations, and I'll send another one because it goes back to what you were saying, Adam. It was about be your own best friend. Yeah, if you're kind to others, why not be kind to yourself? So it's really nice. So that's another one for our young people. I think I said to you on the training, what we try and say to settings is never underestimate the power of the back of the toilet door, for putting some of these images up. Just to remind, that's the one step removed again, those posters, just to say, you be you, value you for being you. And I think the one I sent there was about, your feelings. There are no such things as boys' feelings and girls' feelings. There are simply feelings, and we all have them. And it's what we do with the feelings that are important. So I think for the people, the families that you work with, having this service of people that they could go to and talk with about absolutely anything, that's just wonderful. So thank you for inviting me to come in. It's been lovely.
It's lovely to meet you, Sally-Ann.
Yeah,
I don't doubt for a second you'll be back. I think you've enjoyed it way too much. And I will definitely wear them trousers. If we get Sally back on, I'll put on the grey trousers just for a laugh. Right, so we've been here to listen.
Until next time.
Yes.
Thank you.